Hi. So we'll talk about the Union Budget of 2021-22. It happened very recently. So this is going to be very important for all your preparation because this is quite relevant and fresh. So we'll cover this entire budget in two different parts. First, we'll try to understand what budget really is. We'll try to talk about the related aspects of budget. So that we'll cover in part one. In part two, we'll actually go into the specifics of the finance minister's speech, and we'll try to decode various things that she has mentioned. So this will be part one and this will be part two. So we'll start with part one now. Yeah. So what is a budget? Budget is something that is existing just about everywhere. So we can start right from your family. So in your family, probably you have your parents, and the parents have some sort of an income. Your father has some income, your mother has some income. So you get income from one side, you get receipts from one side. On the other side, you have some sort of an expenditure. So you have some sort of a financial system where you work out how to spend your money based on whatever receipts you get. So budget is something that exists in just about every level, from an individual level to a family level to the national level. So that is about budget. We are talking very specifically here about the budget that is prepared by the government. So before that, we have this beautiful quote from Nikita Khrushchev, which is also somewhat straightforward from our experience. So the quote basically says, "Call it what you will, incentives are what get people to work harder." So people may be nudged based on morality, they may be nudged based on certain principles to act, but basically what gets people to act is some sort of an incentive. Usually it is economic incentive that we talk about. So this was said by a person called Nikita Khrushchev. He was the Russian socialist leader. So even the socialist Russia recognized the principle that incentives are necessary. So that is one major theme. Talking about the budget, so we have the definition here taken from Wikipedia. So we'll try to understand. This is prepared by the government. So some sort of a government of a sovereign nation is going to prepare the budget, and it will present the anticipated tax revenues and proposed spending expenditure for the coming financial year. So there are some keywords here. It is the anticipated receipt and expenditure that we are talking about for the coming financial year. So on one side you have tax revenues or some sort of a revenue, either revenue or some receipt. On the other side, you have spending or expenditure. It has various types. So we'll come to that. So this is all about the coming financial year, not about the year that has already happened. We're not going to talk about what we have done, what were the expenditure and budget receipts for the previous year. So that is one thing. There are different levels of the budget. You have the central budget, the state budget, and the local level budget. So in our country, the thing that makes news most often is the central budget, but state governments in our country do have budgets of their own. They also try to decide on what they want to spend on. But central budget is something that we focus very heavily. So we'll try to understand why that is the case. We also have some sort of a local budget in some countries. In our countries, local budget is not really prominent. Usually the local level administration demands for some sort of grant from the state level and the central level. So that is how it works. This is one very important point. Budgets are not usually intended to be the best allocation of scarce resources to different parts of the economy. So the basic principle of economics is the resources are scarce and the number of people who demand those resources are very large. So we have to have some sort of a system where we allocate those resources. So budgets are not going to talk about what is the best way in which the resource will be allocated. It's more about making a political statement. It's more about making a socio-economic statement or a statement in terms of sustainability, for example. So maybe, working on renewable energy is not going to make economic sense, but it does make sense from the perspective of long-term sustainability. So it is not intended to be the best allocation of scarce resources. There are three types of budgets based on your receipt and expenditure. So that will be a budget in deficit, a budget that is in surplus, and there is something also called as a zero budget. So whatever money you get, only that money you spend, so that will be called as a zero budget. So the money that you get, if you are spending more than that, then that's called as a deficit budget. And if you spend less than whatever money you're getting, that's called as a surplus budget. So those are the three types of budgets. We have two major parts here. So one is revenue and one is capital part. So this is part of any budget. So we can understand this from a very simple example. In your family from the receipt side, if your family is getting some sort of a regular income, a monthly income, so that will be part of the revenue of the family. So that will be part of the revenue receipt of the family. If your family is suppose getting a huge gift from a neighbor, so that gift will be capital. It's a one-time thing. It does not happen regularly. So similarly, that happens on the expenditure side also. If you're going to be paying your rent, that comes as revenue expenditure. If you're going to buy a new car, that comes as a capital expenditure. So this applies on the larger level to the national economy as well. So we'll try to understand that also. There are some technical aspects of the budget which you need to understand. So there is this important term in our budget called as the Consolidated Fund of India. So all the money that is held by the government, it's mostly held in the Consolidated Fund of India. So what is part of the Consolidated Fund? All the revenues received by the government, so whatever revenue it gets, all the loans raised by it, so loans could be from the market, from the domestic market, from the international market, or it could be from multilateral or national level institutions. Then you also have receipts from recoveries of loans. So if the government had granted some sort of loan, then if the government is taking back that loan, taking back the principal amount, then that will be part of the consolidated fund. So basically, in the normal course of working of the government, just about everything comes under the consolidated fund. There is this new concept here, Contingency Fund of India. It has been there for a long time. It's not usually relevant or talked about, but in times of crisis, it is very important. So what is this Contingency Fund? It facilitates the meeting of urgent, unforeseen expenditure. So whenever there is, so obviously there has to be some sort of a saving in your family, so that if something happens, then you need to be ready with the money to, carry out that expenditure. Similarly, in the national level, you have the Contingency Fund of India, which will meet the urgent, unforeseen requirements. So this is important specifically in this budget, because the Contingency Fund of India earlier had a corpus of 500 crores. The finance minister has said that over a short period of time, she would want to increase that to 30,000 crores. So this contingency fund is very important. Some funds will be transferred from the consolidated fund according to laws, according to various rules and regulations. There is also this third fund, which is called as a public fund. We need not go into the details of that. For now, consolidated fund and contingency fund are very important. The budget is not the only document that is submitted in the parliament. So usually the procedure in a democracy is the government is going to prepare a budget. It's going to talk about the receipts and expenditure. That document is to be tabled in a parliament. So after getting the permission from the parliament, the budget will be approved and then the expenditure can carry on. So everything has to be submitted in the parliament. There are other documents that are submitted too. So you have the demand for grants. So that will be a detailed explanation of what each and every ministry is demanding from the central government. Then we have the macroeconomic framework statement. So this is supposed to be submitted to the parliament according to a famous act in 2003. So this talks about the macroeconomic framework, specifically about the deficit of the government. So that is something. We also have the fiscal policy strategy document. So this basically talks about fiscal policy, as the name implies. Fiscal policy refers to basically how we are going to be managing fiscal deficits. So we'll talk about fiscal deficit in the later part. We also have the expenditure budget and receipt budget, which is basically the detailed document talking about the actual budget that is submitted. So these are some of the documents that are submitted. The financial year, this is again one important thing that you need to remember for the budget of our country. The financial year actually starts from April 1 and it ends on 31st of March each year. But the budget is presented on February 1, so that in the 2 months time, there is some space for the government to actually start implementing those projects. So this is about, these are some of the technical aspects. We'll quickly move on to the next slide. Yeah, we'll talk specifically about receipts now. So we are talking about one side of the government's revenue, government's receipts. So there are different types of receipts. You have revenue receipts. So revenue receipts are, as the name clearly implies now, it is more of a continuous sort of a receipt. So it comes to the government very regularly. So you have different taxes. All of these different taxes are part of the revenue receipt of the government. You have corporation tax. That's something the government levies on corporates. So that will be corporation tax. You have income tax on individuals. So if you're earning a salary, you're going to pay income tax. Either your company pays on your behalf or you yourself pay it. Then you have wealth tax, which depends on your wealth, of course. Then you have customs duty, which basically is about exports and imports. So when products are exported or imported, you have this specific duty. GST, so GST stands for Goods and Services Tax. So it is the indirect taxation system on goods and services. GST and customs are not really linked. GST is for indirect taxation. Customs is more of a direct tax, which is more relevant for exports and imports. So that is about the revenue receipts, that is continuous. We also have non-tax revenue. It may be continuous, or it may be even, it may be a revenue receipt, or it may be a capital receipt. Capital receipt basically means it's more of a one-time thing. It's very irregular. So about non-tax revenue, you have interest receipts. So if the government is giving loans to someone, then the other entity has to pay back the government. So some sort of an interest will be there, and that interest will be regular, but it is not really tax. We also have dividends and profits. So you should know this one fact, that the government owns a lot of companies. Those companies are called public sector enterprises. So the public sector enterprises have their own operations. They have their own services or industry provided for the people of our country. So they have profits, and they also have dividends from public sector enterprises. Then you have receipt of union territories. So you could take a moment and think about why union territories are named as union territories. They are really the territories which are controlled by the union government of our country. So whatever operations happen in union territories, the tax revenue and all of that, they come directly to the central government's contingency fund of India. The Consolidated Fund of India. Then you have revenue for public services. So this will include all our bus transport, rail transport. So all the public services, or you also have some public services in which you actually pay the government to carry out certain functions. So all of them will come under revenue, which are under public services. They are not really part of tax. Then you also have profits from financial investments. Now just about any person, any individual or entity can make financial investments. So there are so many financial instruments that you can invest in. So the government also, from time and again, it makes financial investments in the market, and it will receive some sort of profit from those investments. That will also be part of the non-tax revenue. So we'll go to capital receipts now. So under capital receipts, as I mentioned earlier, it's irregular. It's not really continuous. So here you have non-debt capital receipts. So non-debt capital receipts, an example for that might be, you have a public sector enterprise and you want to disinvest from the public sector enterprise. So you sell it to someone else. So that will be a non-debt creating capital receipt. But the other major class of capital receipt will be debt creating. So you get a large number of money from someone, and you are in debt of that particular person or entity. So you have to give back that money. So the best example for that is a loan. So you get a loan from the market. So that will be part of debt capital receipt. You also have short-term borrowings. So short-term borrowings usually are between 90 days. It could also be up to a year. So you have something called the treasury bill of the government, or government securities and all that. So you have various financial instruments. So through those financial instruments, the government actually borrows money from the people for a short term. So that is used by the government. You also have external loans. So external loans are provided by multilateral institutions. They are provided by countries. They are provided by multilateral banks. So that will be external loans. That is also that is a debt creating capital receipt. Then you have provident fund and pension fund. So if you have pension or if you have PF, you actually give part of your money to some sort of a fund, and that money is eventually going to be paid to you when you grow old. So that is about pension fund. The same thing happens for provident fund also. So these are funds which are basically, the money of the individuals. So the individuals contribute money. That money has to actually go back to the individuals. So it's kind of like some sort of a borrowing from the government. So that is also a capital receipt for the government. So these are the different types of receipts. We'll go into the different types of expenditure now. We have basically two types of expenditure. You have revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. So under revenue expenditure, you have the usual expenditure that you make on a regular basis. So that will be salaries for all the employees of the government. Then you have subsidies. So subsidies are something that you need to pay very frequently for. You have subsidies in ration shops. You have subsidies for fertilizers. You need to pay that continuously to keep that subsidy alive. Then you have various schemes which the government, regularly works on. So those schemes, some of those schemes could be capital expenditure based. Some of those schemes will be revenue expenditure based. You also have basic administrative expenses, the expense of maintaining an office, expense of maintaining different assets within the office. So that will be part of administrative expense. You have to pay pension to retired government service employees. So that will be one thing. You also have interest payments. So interest payments is a major part of revenue expenditure. The government has clearly borrowed a lot of money from the market and all of the rest, multilateral institutions. So it has to regularly pay interest for all that. So that will be one thing. We also have grants to states. So grants to states, refers to the central government actually giving some part of the money to the state government under the fiscal federalism sort of principle. So under fiscal federalism, you need to give some sort of an autonomy to the state government. State government has to have some sort of a fiscal strength. So the central government will give grants to states. So that will be also part of the revenue expenditure. Under capital expenditure, it's more of an expenditure of a one-time thing. So it's a large expenditure, it's not regular. So you have defense equipment. So if the government purchased Rafale jets recently, so that will be part of defense equipment capital expenditure. You also have purchase of assets not relating to defense. So that will be about, let's say, investing in a new factory to manufacture trains. So that will be about purchase of assets or creation of assets. So you need to spend for that. Then you have principal amount of loan. So the government will take a lot of money. So if you pay the interest, so that will be part of revenue. If you pay the principal as a one-time thing, then that will be part of the capital expenditure. Then you also have infrastructure. The government regularly works towards creating large infrastructure projects. So that will be about road building, shipbuilding, ports and all that. So that will be part of infrastructure. Then you also have investments in PSU. So the government decides to infuse a lot of money into a particular public sector unit. So that will be part of capital expenditure. So there are lots of different types of expenditures, but this is the basic classification. We'll look at what exactly the government has done at this point of in this particular budget. Yeah, so we'll talk about the budget profile. So there's a very large image. So this is basically a rubreka of how the government functions. So there is one basic feature here, that all the values that are mentioned here are in lakh crores. So we'll talk about one side. So this is about the total size of the budget. It is close to 34.83 lakh crores. In the last budget, it was close to 30.83 lakh crores. So there's a significant increase in the total budget of the government. So there are basically two sides. So this entire side is about receipt. So this will be about receipt, and this entire side is about the expenditure of the government. So this entire image is actually taken from, it's a screenshot of the budget at a glance document that is released in the website. So you can actually go and check it out in indiabudget.gov.in. So here we have the receipts, the various types of receipts. You have basically two types here. One is capital and one is revenue. So capital receipts are from different sources. It could either be debt creating capital receipt or non-debt creating capital receipt. If it is debt creating, you have market loans on one side. You have all the savings and provident fund and all that. You also have other sources of debt receipts, which will include loans from international institutions. You also have non-debt creating capital receipts. So this will involve, for example, disinvestment in PSU. So that will come under that. So we have capital receipts of total 16.95. So that is a level here. Then you also have something else. You have net tax receipts of 15.45 and non-tax revenue of 2.43. So that is the thing. About net tax receipts, you have some gross tax receipts here. So some part of it will actually go to states. So out of the gross tax receipts, some will go to states. So therefore you have the net here. So out of the gross here, you have GST obviously playing a role. So GST is the indirect taxation system. So that comes into exercise. Then you have taxes on income. So income tax comes here. You have corporation tax, you have customs tax. So these are not really part of GST. You also have union excise duties. So these contribute to a very large sum, 22.17 lakh crores come as gross tax revenue. Then some part of it will go to states, devolve to states. Then you have a net tax receipt of 15.45. Under the non-tax revenue of the government, you have interest receipt. Then you have dividends and profits, and there are other sources also. So basically, everything that we talked about in the previous slide, it's been covered. So we'll come to the expenditure side now. So on the expenditure side, you could again talk about revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, but here we are basically dividing that into two. You have scheme expenditure on one side. You have transfers, establishments, and other expenditure. So this part will talk about the direct expenditure of the central government. This part is more about the central government giving money to other institutions so that they will have their own expenditure. So under this, you have two different types here. Basically, you have central sector schemes and centrally sponsored schemes. So central sector scheme really means that the central government will have some sort of a scheme. It will actually pay for the implementation of the scheme. Under centrally sponsored scheme, it will be more of a combined effort of the state government and the central government. So central government will share some money with the state government. The state government will put some money, and then they will implement some sort of scheme. So those are the two types of schemes here. So under central sector schemes, the most significant aspects will be subsidy and food. So economic services is also one major thing. So we have a lot of expenditure basically for food, because we want to implement the ration system. So we want to implement the public distribution system with a lot of easy access to people. We also have subsidy for fertilizers. That is one major thing. So fertilizers are given at a subsidized cost for farmers, so that productivity will be enhanced. So a lot of expenditure goes towards that. Centrally sponsored schemes are a lot in number, so we don't have to talk in detail about that. About transfers and establishments, obviously one thing that you will remember is having salary. So salary will be more of a transfer. It's more about establishment expenditure. So these are all related. So you also have to pay pension. It's not really related to welfare of the country that we are doing. So this is one other different type of classification that we can have. So this is the basic outlay of our budget. You can actually access this image from the internet. So go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a pie chart from the same budget document, Budget at a Glance by the India Budget website. So this basically talks about where the rupee really comes from. So the largest chunk out of all this is the borrowings and other liabilities. It is at 36%. So it is more than a quarter of the overall percentage of the government. So that is pretty significant. Last year, it is important to note that last year this was not 36%. This is somewhere between 15% to 20%. So that was the level. So because of COVID-19, the government was really forced to take a lot of money from the market for its regular expenditure. Then you have corporation tax. So there are so many companies which have to pay tax for all their revenue. So that will be corporation tax. That comes to 13%. Income tax at 14%. There is one notable point here. The population of our country which actually pays income tax is close to 2%, or maximum 2.1 or 2.2%. It's probably even lesser than that. So the majority of the people do not really come into the fold. They do not really pay tax, but still the contribution of income tax to the government's share of revenue is really very high. So that's at 14%. Customs basically relates to exports. So exports and imports, that is about 3%. You have union excise duties. So these duties are imposed on particular products, for example, petroleum. So you have that. Then you have goods and services tax, which have their imprint on just about most of the products and services. So that's at 15%. The GST system was brought about in 2 or 3 years ago. You have non-tax revenue at 6%. So non-tax revenue, to repeat again, it's about interest receipt, for example. So that will be one major part. So that's close to 6%. You have non-debt creating capital receipts. So non-debt creating capital receipts, the most prominent example will be disinvestment from public sector enterprises. So that's at 5%. So to repeat again, this is the most important development of this year, 36%. Last year it was close to 20%. Where rupee goes to. So how does the government decide to spend all that money? So we'll try to understand that. There are two basic different schemes here. So centrally sponsored schemes is one thing, and central sector scheme is the other thing. So central sector scheme, the government spends about 13% of all its money. In centrally sponsored, it gives 9% of all its money to different states so that they can implement it jointly. So the finance minister has clearly said that according to the finance commission's recommendations, the number of centrally sponsored schemes will be reduced to some extent. So that's about one thing. Then you have interest payments. So as I mentioned somewhere earlier, interest payments form a major part of the government expenditure because the government has borrowed a lot of money from a lot of people, from markets, from international entities. So it has to pay interest very regularly for all that. So that's a major commitment for the government, 20% of all the expenses. Defense is probably the most important ministry which gets a lot of money from the government. You have to increase the defense expenditure. So to compare between 2020 and 2021, the defense expenditure has actually increased to some extent because of the conflicts we have with China. We also have various subsidies. It is more or less in the same level. So subsidies are at 9%. So that refers to subsidies for fertilizer, subsidies for food. So we have a lot of subsidies offered by the government. Other prominent example of a subsidy will be subsidy offered for electricity for farmers. So those are some examples. Finance Commission and other transfers. So under the fiscal federalism principle, the central government has to give some sort of money to the state governments out of the total money that it receives. So that is at 41%, that is pegged at 41% in this latest Finance Commission report. So a lot of money will go towards the state for various things. So it's not just about it's more of an incentive based system of transferring money. So if a particular state performs really well in certain indicators, then the money will be transferred. Then you have states share of taxes and subsidies. So this is an entirely different thing. So this money here, this actually belongs to the government, and the Finance Commission recommends that the government has to send some part of it to the state government. But this is a different thing. This is related to GST, for example. This is related to customs duty. So here, it's not related to customs duty. It's related to GST. So you have something called as the GST Council, which is a meeting of the finance ministers of various state governments and the finance minister of the central government. So there are many representatives. The state has a significant representation there. So in the GST Council, they discuss how really the taxes between the center and the state have to be shared. So if you remember from the previous slide, the gross tax revenue was very high for the central government, and then it suddenly became net tax revenue. So that is because a major share has to be given for the states. Then you have pensions. The government has to pay its retired employees, so that is a significant expenditure, about 5%. Then you have various other expenditures which are very clearly mentioned in the budget document if you are interested. Yeah. So we look at sectoral distribution of expenditure just to get a basic idea, not to remember anything. So one extremely important chunk is interest payment. So we have mentioned that again, it was at 20%. It's estimated to be 20% in this financial year. Then you have a major spending for defense. So we need to ramp up defense, and this year we have actually allocated more money for defense. Agriculture and allied services are important. But the other important thing is subsidy, because Indian government subsidizes a lot of products for the people of our country. So we have mentioned that repeatedly. Also, the government spends a lot on transport, not just transport, in the capital sense, but also in the revenue sense. You have to spend quite a lot for that. Pension is, of course, a major part. So we just saw that it was about 5% expenditure overall. Then you have transfer to states. We have seen that from the Finance Commission part. So that is part of the center's money, which actually goes to the different states. You have very low allocation for scientific departments as such, because India is still focusing on development. We want to develop a lot of areas. So we are not able to afford enough for scientific developments. There has been a major increase in health this year because of COVID-19 and the increased, talk about health. So we have more allocation for health this year. We have a standardly high allocation for rural development. The rural areas are very large compared to urban areas. So you need to create employment opportunities. You need to remove poverty. So a lot of money goes there. So these are some of the major sectors. You can again go to the document to get more details if you want. We'll talk about two things here. So first major thing is that there will be deviations from the estimates. So we have published estimates for various ministries and various sectoral expenditure for this year. But obviously by the end of the year, there is going to be some sort of a deviation from whatever we estimated. So for last year, what were the various deviations? So there was so this gives us a picture of how COVID-19 really impacted the economy and impacted the government's plan. So we had to spend far more on food subsidy. So after COVID-19, after the immense reverse migration that we faced, we had to give a lot of food subsidy. So you can relate this to Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, that scheme. There had to be given fertilizer subsidy because agriculture was one of the only sectors that was actually growing. So you should not really allow that to falter. So fertilizer subsidies are increased. Rural employment. So this refers to increased allocation under MGNREGA, so Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So under this act, 100 days of employment will be guaranteed for each and every individual in the rural area. So rural employment had to be increased, especially because there were a lot of urban people who actually migrated back to their villages. Capital expenditure of railways was significantly increased in the last year. Significant increase was also seen in defense because we had conflicts with China, and we had to rapidly, increase our spending so that we are able to match the level of threat. Civil supplies, obviously, this is related to food subsidy. So food was subsidized in one sense. Then you have supply. So supply has to be enhanced in the food distribution system. So that is again one thing. Medical and public health, obviously very significant increase here. So a lot of testing centers had to be brought up. We had a lot of volunteers who worked at just about practically no cost for the government, but still the medical and public health expenditure was pretty significant. Then you also had some grants for housing. So these are some minor sectors. So this basically gives a picture of how the COVID-19 economic situation has impacted the plan of the government. So the next we talk about is what is the approach of the government. And last year for some sectors it would have allocated something. In this year's budget, what really it wants to allocate. So clearly the government wants to allocate a lot of money for capital. So it wants to increase infrastructure overall. So it wants to allocate a lot of money for capital. Interest payment, obviously, it's not about allocating. It's not about the government allocating that money for interest payment. The government really has to pay that interest payment because it has borrowed much more than usual because of COVID-19. Then you also have grants and aid to different state governments. So that also has to be increased because the state governments have faced a lot of a huge deficit. So they can't really, function that way. So the center had to help out the state government quite a lot of time. Medical and public health, there is a significant portion of the government which covers only the medical welfare of our people, only the public health. So that is about an increased allocation. We also increase the allocation for water supply and sanitation because it is the thinking of the government that if this improves, then health automatically improves. So that is one major part. You also have so many other minor increase in allocations here. Again, defense has been increasing continuously because we face some sort of a threat in our borders. One major point here, but is census. Usually for census, some modest allocation is made, but here this year significant allocation is made because the census is coming up. The operations are yet to begin. So these are the different variations in expenditure. So this is about the basic, part of the budget. So we'll talk about the actual points in the budget in the next part. So stay tuned and look out for the next video. Thanks.